Ahoy there! It's Captain Donna, doing the next video in the Hearthstone series, Naxxramas neutral cards, class synergy. There's a new wing out this week, right? Plague Quarter, so we're going to be doing cards from that. We'll do the Ghoul today. Here we go, Unstable Ghoul. The sprinklers are like going outside, so if you hear like some kind of background noise that sounds like static or a hiss, sorry man, I mean they gotta, I don't know, they have to water the area where the plants are, so I don't know, some computer controls them, whatever. Anyway, the Unstable Ghoul, right? It's 2-drop, it's got the taunt, it's 1/3, and its death rattle is a whirlwind, right? It does 1 damage to all minions, so it kind of builds that warrior card into it. When this card was released, I saw a lot of people talking about how it was going to be really good, how it was a strong anti-zoo card. There's a handful of cards in Nax that kind of counter your early game aggro decks, especially zoo, and so this was one of those that people were pretty excited about. When this card was released, though, you know, on the Reddits and the forums and the things that I'm looking at, people I'm talking to, everybody says this card sucks. It's total crap, and you know, nobody would ever use it, and because it's going to be garbage, right? And the big critique is that 1 damage doesn't do anything, and the whirlwind doesn't do anything because nobody's going to run 1 health stuff. Okay, I'll give you that 1 damage isn't that great, and it does suck that this card trades with a 3/2, or that this card doesn't trade with a 3/2. Except if its death rattle goes off, then it does trade with a 3/2. So I think there's a little bit of falsity in that, you know, saying that it's just a more expensive Void Walker. Like, I hear that, right? But I don't know. If they don't silence it, then their 3/2 running into it is still going to die. And if it's turn 2, you know, I mean, how many minions are really going to be on the board? But the 1 damage is a little low. Clearly the value in this card from the design is going to be the whirlwind that's baked into it. Now, people are saying that sucks. Well, I can guarantee you the card Whirlwind in Warriors, you go ask anybody that's played Warrior decks, that card does not suck. There are a ton of uses for that card. And it's, you know, that card specifically is a Warrior thing, and we'll get to that when we talk about this with Warrior. But you think about it, you know, well, nobody's going to run 1 health minions anymore. I go, okay, well, really? Like, hunters aren't going to run buzzards or timberwolves, and paladins aren't going to use their hero power, and nobody's going to run leper gnomes, and nobody's going to run argent squires. I mean, there's a ton of good 1 health minions. Nobody's going to harvest golems because this might kill the back end, right? There's a ton of good 1 health minions that I think people are not going to be as quick as the internet seems to think that they're just going to race away from, right? And as you'll see, the big value with this card is the ability to combo the whirlwind with other stuff, with other cards or other hero powers or situations like that. Let's take a look at the classes, and let's go to Druid here. Let me bring the card up. Okay. Druid is a class that has basics, right? They have the 1 damage hero ability. Druid has that, Rogue has that, Mage has that. And so with all of them, those are things that they synergize pretty well with this card because it's a way to get 1 damage out there, and you can use your hero ability to take down a 2 damage minion, right? You can stretch that whirlwind now to deal with 2 damage things. Anything that does damage to the whole board, it just gives you more control over how you want to dispose of threats that are on the board, how you want to manage it, things like that. And Druids have a couple other cards that kind of help with that. Moonfire, right? You know, that's 1 damage, it's 0, so there's no tempo loss to it, but it is a card loss. And even Druid's big sweep, right, is Swipe. Swipe's value is, yeah, you're going 1 for 1 with a 4 health minion, right? Or you're comboing it into taking down something bigger. But with Swipe, where you get the real value with Swipe, the thing that people groan about with Swipe when they eat it in the arena, right, is when that 1 damage wipes out other crap too. So with this Ghoul, you're looking at kind of a banked up spell power into a Swipe. They have a board, you know, maybe that Ghoul's still alive or something. You drop it on, you know, turn 3 or something. Anyway, you have a situation where there's minions, you run the Ghoul into whatever minion, so it blows up and it does the damage, and you drop your Swipe, and now you've done a 5/2 swipe instead of the 4/1. You know, when you have this 1 damage that spreads all over the place, that, you know, that links up pretty well with the swipe here. On the ramp side of things, you know, innovating and out turn 1, I could see that working pretty well, if it's, especially if it's a zoo deck, because of the taunt, right? Because the taunt's there, and it will prevent an early aggro deck like a Shakadin or even like Zoo from playing those Leopard Gnomes, from playing, you know, your Young Priestess, from playing cards that you do see a lot of that have 1 health that's there. And then you have, you know, if it comes out in the early game, it's gonna affect minions on the board that are gonna take damage, so they're gonna be weakened, right? Druid, a lot of Druids don't fill the board with minions for the couple turns. You know, you get a Harvest Golem or you innervate out something bigger, but Druid is classically a slower class that just spends more time to put bigger minions that are out there, and they use their great control skill. You know, they do their great control spells like your Claws, your Wraths, things like that. Swipe, Starfall, we'll use those to control the board, so you can put out stuff that's really difficult to get rid of, especially on an empty board, like a Druid of the Claw, like their, you know, like their 5/5s, like their huge guys. You know, this is a card that gives you more early game control, and it affects the early game board. I think the downside of your own minions getting hit by the Whirlwind is weaker, because Druid usually doesn't play a lot lower minions. I mean, you know, even look at their class set. The smallest minion they have is, okay, Power of the Wild, sure, but sometimes you don't use that. You know, it's Keeper. Pretty good. You know, even Wrath, right? Wrath is really powerful to cycle it for a card. If you're putting 1 more damage on it, now you can do Wrath. You can do a 2 damage Wrath to cycle the card through if you suicide this. If you suicide this Ghoul or he dies to something. It's. Now, I could even see a situation where you use Savagery, you know, not a popular Druid card. Shows up in Arena every now and then, right? I haven't really seen it in Constructed, but there's something that's there. Druid, you got the 2 damage, you know, you flip out your hero power, so you have your 1 attack, you know, you swing at the opponent or whatever, or hit something, and then now, you know, you could, if your guy is facing a 2/2 or something, you do, and you boop, and you hit your Ghoul to kill him, and you can spawn this Whirlwind if he only has 1 hit point left. It's something that's there, right? It's just a little more control that's there. Druid does lose out a little bit because, you know, some of their buffs give taunt, which can be taunt can be just as important as the stats that you get with Mark of the Wild. That's a way that Mark of the Wild is something that you will use to draw minions into attacking an unfavorable minion of your own. You know, like Druid of the Claw, right, with its 6 health, or the big 10 health tree. Well, those already have taunt, so terrible examples. Better example, a Yeti, right? That's a way better example. A Yeti, or maybe an Ogre in Arena, right? Those kind of fat or vanilla minions that you just throw a taunt onto. Now your opponent can't ignore them. Now they have to go around them. You know, so Druids will use Mark of Nature and Mark of the Wild to do that. With the Ghoul, the stats are nice, but it already has taunt, so that loses out a little bit. I don't think that as a 2-drop with 3 health, it is particularly sticky or anything like that. In fact, it's not sticky. It's a taunt, so it's in the front of the line. So your, you know, your plays where you're trying to get sticky minions to line up for a Savage Roar, for buffs, for a Power of the Wild token combo, gonna be a little weaker with this guy for sure. I mean, you could even do 2 damage to it with a Keeper if you needed to, right? That could be a way to sweep a board if you really needed the Whirlwind. Just those little control things on Druid are nice. Some synergy with your Poison Seeds, right? It'll destroy it. The Whirlwind still goes off, though it would happen. What would happen? I think everything would die, and then the Whirlwind would happen. It would hit everything. So I think everything would come back 2/1. But I actually don't know. I haven't seen those cards interact yet. So if you want to leave me a comment about that, I'd be really interested there. A little desync too with just the amount of taunts that Druid has that they commonly run, so it's not super exciting that it's a taunt. You know, it's not like a last bastion thing you're gonna throw out to save your life against Leroy or something. You know, hey buddy. But yeah, I think that it does sync up with some of their spell stuff, some of their 1 damage sweeps, the hero power, but that's about it. Mortimer obviously is really interested in this card. You were not even in this room when we started filming. Okay, let's sit down. We gotta do the thing. Hunter, it's not a beast, so you don't have any of the beast combos, but there are some other, some other interesting things here. You look at Hunter's Mark, right? Change a minion's health to 1. This is something where you can set up, you can set up a situation where you kill their big minion by triggering the whirlwind on the Ghoul. A warrior would love to have a card like Hunter's Mark where you can drop it to 1 because you can control then when the sweep's going to come. You could even arcane shot your own thing if you needed to, right? It could be that important at some type to clear off some, I don't know, Ragnaros or something huge like that. So I think Hunter's Mark combos well with it in the same way that Hunter's Mark combos with a Wild Pyromancer, right? You're using a low damage, kind of a low impact spell like the Pyromancer's Whirlwind and like this Ghoul's Whirlwind to bring down something big that it traditionally would not be able to do. That's the strength of Hunter's Mark, and it lines right up with this card. Explosive Trap, there's some synergy there, right? I mean, Explosive Trap's going to do 2. There's a lot of times as Hunter where you're frustrated by a 3 health minion that's out there. Maybe you even have 2 3 health minions, right? You could attack one with the Ghoul, and then it'll bring everything down to 2. If it's a class that doesn't really heal its minions much, then your Explosive Trap becomes that much more potent, has that much more reach on it. Snipe, if it brings somebody down to 1, I mean, these are things that can kind of inadvertently lower the health of the minion, and it can be pretty good. There's a lot of things. I mean, they have a lot of stuff that just does damage to minions, right? And so this, if running this minion into a monster first, or them killing it to get by a taunt the turn before sets you up for one of these, that's pretty good. I mean, these are very specific types of damage. 3 to 2 enemy minions, you can combo that. Explosive shot, you aim pretty well. All that kind of stuff is pretty good. There are some pretty big downsides to Hunter using this card, though. You have a lot of 1 health minions. You Timberwolf, you don't want that to die. Web Spinner, you do want that to die, so that's that's kind of interesting right there. Misdirect's not going to do anything because it has a taunt, right? It's never going to really trigger that. There's something else. Snake Trap, it's going to wipe that out. Your Buzzard's only got 1 health. If you pull Huffer on the AC, it's getting pretty weak. I don't know. So there's a lot of things that can die. But maybe you could roll that into a Scavenging Hyena. You're Unleash the Hounds, right? That's all a bunch of 1/1 little guys. It is a way to kind of enable fuel for the Scavenging Hyena. These are big minions that you don't really want to lose, but you don't want to lose a Buzzard like ever. You don't want to lose a Timberwolf if you're putting them out there. Web Spinner's fodder. The Hounds are usually charging into something, but if you have 1/1s and you're playing against like a mage or something, or a class that can do 1 damage to things really easily, using this, converting them into Scavenging Hyena fuel, yeah, that's pretty good. That's something. That's definitely something to be there. You got a Buzzard, they pop a Snake Trap so it's out, they shoot something down. You drop a Hyena, you run the thing into another monster, now you got a huge Hyena. Yeah, okay. That could be there. But you have to manage that really well. It's kind of it's an interesting card for Hunter for me, because there's a real skill cap in management, I think, of how to make sure your minions aren't vulnerable when you don't want them to be, and how they are when you want to mop them up for a hand. But yeah, Unleash, that's just an infinite that's an X amount of number of 1/1 little pings, and so this card, what? Okay, I'm not bothering you anymore. That's just one more thing on top of that. Too bad it's not a beast, right? Mage is similar to Hunter. They have a lot of those things, right? Arcane missiles, Arcane Explosion. These are things that just do damage to minions out there. You're typically using them to remove early minions or to be that last little push to bring down a mid-range minion or something big. And this taunt thing is just one more thing that is, right? A mid-range minion comes out, you know, you draw this card mid-game, you throw it down, it's a taunt, they attack it, they take some damage, it damages the rest of their board, and that's just a nice boost to cleaning up with missiles, cleaning up with Arcane Explosion, cleaning up with Blizzard, cleaning up with Flame Strike, right? Cleaning up with the hero power, too. I mean, Mage is the ultimate one damage hero power with no life, you know, drawback to it, so kind of cool in Mage. Mage's hero power can target anything, unlike Druid and Rogue, so if it needed to shoot its own thing down to do 1 damage to everything, it's great. You know, combos with Cone of Cold, right? That does 1 damage to stuff. A lot of times you use the freeze mechanic to be able to draw out 2 hero power usages, right? That's how you take down a 5 mana or a 5 health thing with Frostbolt, because you freeze it, ping it, next turn ping it again, and that's how you take down 3 health things with Cone of Cold. You know, freeze, ping, next turn ping again. This gives you 1 more thing to lay on top of that. Wipe out Polymorph Sheep. You know, there's some stuff there. There's a little more, I think, than people think that there is. With Duplicate, I don't know, maybe. I mean, you load a couple of these things up on the board, you're doing 2 damage sweeps. I mean, it's, you know, that's Consecrate or something. So Mage has a lot of tools that I think it actually goes pretty well with, because you bringing things down to 1 health is pretty important for Mage, so their hero power can clean them up. And this is just one more thing, especially in the early game, that can do that. That said, Mage is already pretty strong in the early game, right? Because this card usually isn't going to leave anything left alive. When Mana Worm starts getting buffed with your mirror images, your hero power itself, you're already putting a lot of pressure on early game decks if you have these tools in your deck. And so, is the Ghoul too much? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe. It's another taunt, right? A lot of aggro mages, they want... Mirror Image is great because it protects Mana Worm. It protects Knife Jugglers. It protects, you know, Harvest Golem. It protects minions that you want to keep alive in the early game. And so this is another taunt that would do that. So yeah, I think it works well with Mage. You know, Freeze Mage, no, but kind of an earlier aggressive Mage. And there's no real downsides. Mages don't carry any really low health minions, except Mana Worm. But if you can put a taunt behind that, or a taunt in front of that, you're usually going to be okay. Paladin is very polarizing, right? Because there's some big ups and there's some big downs. You know, with you look at something like, you see Light's Justice every now and then in Arena, and that can be really good in the beginning with this, because it gives you that 1 damage attack. It turns you into a rogue for a couple turns, right? And so the combo there is cool. It's a taunt, so any of your buffs are going to be good. Your Blessing of Might, your Blessing of Kings, you know, those being put on taunts is always kind of an extra value because your opponent has to trade into that. It has to. It can buff up, you know, it can set you up for a stronger Consecration. It can set you up for a stronger Hammer of Wrath. You know, there's some stuff there. You know, with Avenging Wrath, if it comes out way late, right, and you do that to follow it up, that just softens the board up so much for an Avenging Wrath. That can be a real benefit there as well. Little weaker with Sword of Justice, good combo. I mean, that's good for any low drop minion at all. You know, 1/3 is kind of weak for a 2-drop, but 2/4 is pretty solid for a 2-drop. So, you know, that's going to survive most 3-drops right there. So that's real beefy. Plus, you have that 1 damage ping on top of it. Where it falls off a little bit, I think, in Paladin is Divine Shield, right? Because a lot of the value from this minion comes from the Whirlwind on its death rattle, not from preserving its health to do 1 attack worth of damage. So I think your Divine Shield plays with your Protector and Hand of Protection. It's going to be a little weaker, right? Not quite as good, because you kind of want it to die to get the value out of it. A great, equality, huge combo. Paladin's big clear right now is an equality pyromancer, right? That's the full board clear on both sides. You kind of have another one now. You have to get the ghoul to stick for a turn, but if it does, then you run it into whatever they summoned, and you cast equality first, run it into whatever they summoned, and then everything on the board is dead. And redemption will give you kind of one more whirlwind out of it when you need it to be there. Those are that's a good secret. It combos with repentance too. Paladins have these things where they like to reduce crap to 1, and so this does 1 damage to everything, which is pretty good. Drawbacks, I mean, you got a huge one with Paladin, which is probably going to be a deal breaker by itself, which is that it negates your hero power. I mean, that's it. Like, you're going to kill all your 1/1 dudes. Paladins spawn tokens, and this thing is the token killer. So it's tough for me to see it, and I have seen it in some Paladin decks already today. It's tough for me to see it in a Paladin deck just because of that. Because a lot of Paladin's value comes from giving your opponent these tokens that they have to deal with them, right? Or you might buff them. They might get a Blessing of Kings. They might get Might. They might, who knows? They might have something crazy that happens to them, and they might get a bunch of value out of no card use, right? Or very little card use because it's a hero ability. So the Ghoul directly cuts back against that. That sucks. Now all of a sudden, your opponent is thinking of ways to combo to kill the Ghoul to effectively eliminate your board. That's not what you're going to want, and you're always going to have 1/1 minions out as a Paladin. So that's a big drawback that's there. Priest. Priest can control this card a lot more because of the hero ability, right? Priest, it's, the 3 health isn't anything to laugh, isn't really anything that's great, but they can undo some of the damage that they may not want done to their board for taking the whirlwind with their healing ability, with Circle of Healing. Those are cards that protect your minions, and they help to really, I think, negate or mitigate, I guess is more accurate, the damage that this card does do to you. So that's good, right? Smite's a cheap 2 damage. Again, that can combo with the extra 1 damage. You have to think of this card as kind of a 1 damage that's also on demand, because if it's your turn, you can run it into whatever you want to, for the most part. Dealing with getting around taunts and basic board control stuff. If it's their turn and they invest a minion into killing it, that means it's going to take 1 more damage than it usually would. So, you're looking at, these are bumped up a little bit, your smites and your holy fire, which is the 5 damage one, right? With shadow form, that's a pretty good combo because you can direct that 2 or 3 damage in shadow form wherever you want it to go. It gets around taunts and everything, so that's just more control over what it is you want to do there. Now, it is a 1/3, and so just like the cleric, right? Throwing a power word shield on it, not too bad at the beginning. North Shadows are great because that makes them sticky for a 1-drop, and you can heal them. This thing is a 2-drop, so it's a little slower, but 2-drop coin, power word shield. Now even those 3 2s aren't getting through it, right? Heal it, you come in, wipe everything out. So that's a decent card for it. It's still tough to see that really being invested in this card over a cleric or over a wild pyromancer, common in so many priest decks because of this card, I think specifically. Nova, that's the sweep. It's one more thing. The Soul Priest sweep, it's just more damage that's there. Specifically, you're looking now, if you do a Soul Priest Circle of Healing sweep, you're looking at a 5 damage full board clear because it's going to kill the Soul Priest too. So that's just, it's one more kind of bump that's there for that, which can be really valuable at certain times for priests. On the defensive side, I should mention this too. It's got 3 health, so, maybe Inner Fire, Divine Spirit. I can see those cards working more with minions with higher health than 3, and I don't think you're definitely not gonna invest those in in a taunt minion, so not really that great. You could priest is they could silence it if they really needed to, right? The only class that has a card that silences that's not like a minion or something and it's 0 mana. So you could do that if you really wanted to avoid that whirlwind. If your opponent throws it out, you got Shadow Word Pain, kills it. You can snake it with the Cabal. You can take it with Shadow Madness. Kind of do some unexpected stuff. Shadow Madness is, I think, a particularly powerful card against it because it's going to be, what if it's like their only minion that's out there or something, or their only taunt that's out there. It's protecting something that's big. Can remove the taunt, knock it into whatever, even maybe throw the whirlwind on them if that's kind of how it goes. I don't think this would be coming that late to benefit much from the Temple Enforcer. I'm talking about a 1/6 on like turn 7, turn 8. The 1 health isn't gonna. The 1 attack, I don't think that'll be doing that much. So okay for Priest. Just it kind of combos with the sweeps and stuff, and I guess maybe Shadow Form's decent, a little better. I mean, just like it does for everything else, but nothing too special there. With Rogue, you have some flexibility, right? You can backstab it if you really need. There could be times where killing it is going to be more valuable than it attacking for 1 damage. You want to trigger that whirlwind on it. Granted, it's got 3 health, so this thing has to have 1 damage done to it some other way, but who knows? Or, you backstab, you set up for, it's a 4-point play, right? You could take down, with backstab, you could take down a Drake with this card, right? You send the 1/3 into the Drake. Well, you backstab it first because it's undamaged, then you send it into the Drake, and then the Death Rattle kills it. So there's a little more stretch coming from that card. Same thing with Cold Blood. If you really needed it to get a taunt out of the way, you turn it into the 5/3 plus the whirlwind on top of it. Conceal gives you a little more control. Conceal and what's the stealth? Master Disguise gives you a little more control as Rogue over when it is you actually want it to come out and blow up. But I don't know. I don't think you'd blow a Conceal on it. That's a pretty valuable card for the decks that it's in. The Blade Fury is interesting because that typically is going to do 1 damage, right? You're usually using that to finish off already kind of worn down combos, minions, even with the dagger or with a backstab or an SI agent or something, and you're using that 1 damage to sweep everything else. Rogues actually have a couple 1 damage sweeps. Most of the time, Blade Flurry is one, and then Fan of Knives is a 1 damage sweep, right? And so this is yet another 1 damage sweep that can go out there. They have all this stuff that just does this little bit of damage. Shiv, Perditions, the SI7 agent. These things do these little tiny bits of damage because Rogue is based on doing these little combos of these things that add up to good value. And this is another tool that they can utilize to do that. It adds on 1 more damage. Maybe it makes that Fan of Knives now a full board clear instead of just clearing 1 or 2 minions, right? So, pretty decent there. Rogue has minions sometimes that you want to protect. Like, you want to put Van Cleef behind a taunt sometimes. You want to put your SI agent behind a taunt sometimes. And so this is out there. And, it's pretty, you definitely want to put this, a noob dude, you want to put the Ambusher behind a taunt because he's a 5/5. And so you want to be wrecking or getting the most value out of him that you can because of the tempo loss. So there's just a little taunt that is out there that they have to, it's 1 more barrier that they have to deal with. None of the top end cards are synergized with it. Because Rogue has the flexibility, all of its direct damage can also target this creature. There's some good interaction there, because they have the flexibility. I think the key to the Ghoul is controlling and trying to maximize when the whirlwind is going to happen and getting the most value out of it that you can. Rogue has tools to do that because they can target it, they can target enemies, they can adjust a lot to how the board is. Druid has that a little in like Wrath and Starfall because it can choose those different things, but Rogues have that choice built in all of their damaging things. You could even Cold Blood enemy minion and run this into it if you needed to. You probably would never blow such a valuable card as Cold Blood doing that, but it's a possibility, right? It's something that is something that's out there. Now, the downside to Rogue is that, you know, you kind of have wimpy creatures a lot of times, right? You know, this thing is gonna kill your 2/1 Defies Bandit. Your patient assassin is dead. I mean, that thing dies to everything in the game, and so that kind of sucks. You know, even your kidnapper, 3 health. Ugh, this card blows too. But you know, you gotta worry a little more because you usually, like Hunter, you usually have wimpier minions, especially early game ones. So that 1 damage on your own guys, it might mean a lot more than you need to, especially with Argent Squire so popular in Tempo or Aggro Rogue, and South Sea Deckhands in your really aggressive Rogue that has the Pirates, that has the 2/1 charge guys in it. Yeah, there's some downside there too, but overall I like Rogue because of the flexibility of controlling the Whirlwind. Shaman has kind of similar spells where they have those little pings that they do too, right? You know, both the shocks do a point of damage. Fork, you know, it kind of is this weird balance in Shaman where it can shore up some of the randomness that Shaman has to deal with because of the power of its spells. Fork's random, what targets it hits, right? The dream is you hit, you know, when there's only 2 minions out there, but everybody that's played with Forked Lightning has always, like, there's been 3 minions, they've always missed the one that they need to kill, right? That always happens. And so it can shore that up with adding 1 more AoE effect. Lightning Storm is a very frustrating card when it rolls the bottom number, so this can shore up with that as well. Yeah, even Feral Spirits are a little bit annoying because they're the 2/3s, right? And so they don't. Now all of a sudden with Feral Spirits out, you use this card and it can take down a Harvest Golem, right? That's where a Feral Spirit before can't really do that. So it offsets some of the weaknesses of Shaman, and it combos in the same way that it does with all your things that do little bits of damage. You know, it can, you know, that Lightning Bolt now has a little more reach, that Lava Burst has a little more reach, Charge minions you're dropping next to a Flame Tongue totem have a little more reach, Flame Tongue Conveyor Belt, you know, totems, that has a little more reach, Fire Elemental can do a little more, all that kind of stuff, even Doomhammer maybe, right? So it's nice in there. There's a little downside, you know, it's gonna kill Dust Devil. My card sucks, so don't worry about that. But you know, wipes out one of your totems. It hurts your totems, and you're usually gonna have those out. It has a downside, just like Paladin. Maybe it's not as big of a downside because it's gonna kill your minions as Paladin, but you know, it's gonna damage. Usually, you're gonna have some totems that are out there, but you know, Healing Tide totem offsets that completely. So if you do it on your turn, right? So you can, there's more risk because it's going to damage your stuff. You're probably going to have minions out with totems, but if you manage it correctly or get lucky, you know, if you have a Healing Tide totem out, then it'll you can completely eliminate the downside that this card has, which is nice. The one attack and stuff, you know, Wind Fury, not that great with this card because it's got such low attack. You want Wind Fury on, obviously, minions with high attack, so you can do lethal or, yeah, so you can hit your opponent usually for lethal. But high health stuff is really good for Wind Fury too because it can survive that first attack and then kill something else. It can 2-for-1 or attack twice into the same target or whatever. With 1 attack, with 3 health, man, you know, it's not that great. A little more reach on the axe. You know, it's okay for Shaman. I think probably the best combo is helping the Lightning Storm mop up. That card is already devastating to Zoo and stuff, but with this, you know, with the Ghoul now, yeah, you can get around those Divine Shields a little more. Things like that. Alright, turn into Warlock. Can't do, you know, nothing with Sacrificial Pact. Deal breaker. Done. Warrior. Now let's talk about Warlock a little more. Mortal Coil, I think, is the best combo with it. One of them, maybe not the best, but it's definitely up there because that's your ultimate finisher for minions as a warlock, right? Because you get a card draw out of it, and so this just gives it that much more reach. Or you can Mortal Coil your own, your own Ghoul too if you need to. So that's there. You probably never Soulfire it, but maybe, if you're facing a full board of 1/1s on a Paladin and you're worried about a Stormwind champion or something, yeah, maybe. Not bad. You have these cards that, like, kill stuff, right? Power Overwhelming, you can kind of turn into this little swipe now. It's a minion that's going to hit something for that much damage and then wipe everything out, which is, I mean, that's a swipe, right? Just having that bonus Whirlwind on its death, it gives you a little more reach on Power Overwhelming for board clears. Though, to be fair, you usually are using Power Overwhelming to try to kill your opponent, but yeah, it comes up a lot of times when you need to do it in the mid-game to take control back of things. Demon Fire, you can hit it with that. Drain Life, you can hit it with that. You can do those things to kind of control. You can kill with Shadow Bolt. Typically cards you'd use on opponent minions, but because of what this card offers, it's kind of like, you go, okay, do I need to kill something of theirs, or do they have like 3 things that I can do a combo with 1 health? Is that going to get me more value out of the cards? Shadow Bolt is really high value because it's 4 damage for 3 mana, but lower impact stuff like Drain Life and Demon Fire, those are cards you want to push for more value on because they're Drain Life's 3 mana for 2 damage. It's not really that great. Void Tear is cool for it, right? Because Void Tear triggers death rattles when you want them to trigger. Kind of like Rogue, it gives you that control over when you want the Whirlwind to go off. But the Void Tear gets you a minion out of it for the cost of 1 health of the Void Tear. So now, you can think of your Void Tear as dropping with a Whirlwind on it, and that could be cool. That could be really good. Hellfire combo's great with it because Hellfire is going to kill it. You could drop it, Hellfire. Now you're doing a 4 damage Hellfire, right? And sometimes you need that to happen. Shadow Flame, same thing. The 1 damage off it isn't that good, but it triggers the death rattle, right? These kill your minions, so it triggers the death rattle, and it's giving you that control over when to do it. Dread Infernal has the same ability. Almost, it hits heroes too, but it's on the battle cry. So you could have, several things that are happening when, it's out there, it's got the taunt, right? It's like, okay, you run into something, and you drop it, so it does 1 damage. You drop the Dread Infernal, it does 1 more damage, kills everything. You Mortal Coil something to finish off the 2/3 that was still alive out there or something. There's definitely stuff that is there. It's just these little things. Does not combo with Twisting Neither because everything's going to be dead. But having that legacy there is pretty good. It can pick off the Harvest Golem. Any of the stuff with 1 health that sticks around. So I actually like it for Warlock. In the styles of Warlock, in Zoo, it's another kind of board disruption. It's another taunt. Zoo really likes taunts because it likes to protect minions with Divine Shield. It likes to protect Knife Jugglers. It likes to protect Direwolf Alphas. Things that can... things that it wants to keep alive. This is another taunt that it kind of do that. Most zoos only run with a few taunts, right? They run with Void Walkers. Traditional zoo runs with Shield Bearer, and you have your Defender Vargas to give stuff taunt too. Well, this is just one more thing to control the board a little more. But the downside in Zoo's big too, because this is like an anti-Zoo card. It's going to damage your guys for 1 health, and your minions typically don't have very much health to spare. So you really have to manage it well, I think, just like you would in Hunter. With Handlock, your longer game Warlocks, its value is there as an anti-aggro card. A little less than like a Freeze Mage or something that's going to be able to... that has a ping ability, because Warlocks don't, but, it's there. You think about Mortal Coil, a lot of Handlocks run with that, right? And so this is because, 1 damage isn't going to do much for, looking to go to turn 10 and beyond, right? But it does. It still has value. So I think the Whirlwind will still have value Yeah, maybe not that much in handlock. Alright, now Warrior, I think, is far and away the best class for it, because what this thing does is it's a taunt that damages stuff, right? I mean, it has the Whirlwind baked in, and Whirlwind is a card that has like a million uses in Warrior. You know, Whirlwind and Enrage, you know, now you can kill someone with Enrage, execute, it triggers, it's your execute trigger, that's a big deal. Gives War Axe a little more reach. Battle Rage, if it's your guys, the Whirlwind draws off of them. If you damage your guys, you rampage them. Commanding Shout makes you can kill your opponent's guys but not kill your guys. You know, Armor Smith, that fuels your armor. You know, the more things that hits, the better. Taskmaster's one more damage on it. And it all pours into Frothing Berserker, right? You know, that buffs everything. So Warriors, this card does that. It's another Whirlwind, but it's plus a minion. So there's a lot. It's even plus a charge minion with Warsong Commander. You're talking about charging a minion that procs a Whirlwind. You know, that stuff, not bad. Not bad at all. You know, 1 health minion survives a brawl, dead. You know, Grommash, use that thing to, a lot of times use a Whirlwind to enrage Grom. You know, you could use this to enrage Grom too. Drop Grom, you know, the thing's still out for whatever reason, running into whatever's left on the board. Now Grom is, you know, enraged. That's big. Whirlwind, it's almost like you don't need to explain that much about it, because Whirlwind is such a valuable card for Warrior anyway. It works with so many things, both within the Warrior set and with cards that Warrior typically runs. This card does the same thing. It's just tied to a minion, right? You don't have as much control over when you can make it happen like you do with Whirlwind. You know, everybody that's played Control Warrior has done the you know, the turn 6, you know, killer mid game play where you go Armor Smith, Acolyte of Pain, Whirlwind. So you get 2 armor and a card. Pretty good. And, you know, and usually maybe if it kills some other stuff on their side too, that's cool. So you don't have as much control because it's not a spell, but it's just one more thing to deal with early game aggression, which Warrior, you know, struggles with maybe a little bit. All classes struggle with early game aggression, right? If the aggro deck gets good draws and you don't get good draws, then you're just in trouble, right? You got to find a way to get the board back. Whirlwind is the way that Warrior does that. Having a taunt minion that procs a Whirlwind, also good in that. You know, Inner Rage and Taskmaster particularly interesting because, you know, you can bump this thing up to a 3/2 and then trade that into, you know, any 3-drop, right? So it's there, plus the Whirlwind after it. You know, I mean, Slam, same thing. It's just there's all this stuff is solid for it. You could slam it, draw a card off of it, and then Whirlwind, kill it to do 1 damage also to their side, and then its other Whirlwind goes off, you know, to essentially drop a Consecrate on them. And if you have guys up, give you armor too, and cards if you have an Acolyte. So there's some cool stuff in Warrior. I think that it syncs up well because it, you know, obviously it is one of their class cards. It's just on a minion. So, no, not bad. Overall, I was surprised to see the amount of hate that this card started getting. And, you know, is it the greatest anti-aggro card in the world? No, because the 1 attack isn't, you know, super excited. And there is a drawback to it. But I think that it'll affect more minions than people give it credit for. It'll synergize more with certainly classes that have the 1 damage ping and ways to do little bits of damage to controlled. I think it'll work out better with them. And the card may end up being more popular than you think, you know, kind of like an Acolyte of Pain or something that may not look like that great of a card at first glance, but there are just all these little things that make it kind of cool. It's not like the card's slow, right? It's a 2-drop. It has like okay stats on it, but you know, and you know, overall also it's a taunt. Like, it can single-handedly stop a Leroy combo, right? If they can't get rid of it, because it'll kill Leroy. You know, well, it'll kill your whelps too. But you know, having another, you know, a taunt is valuable in the sense that it can stop one turn kill combos that rely on hitting you, at least for one turn. So there's some value for every class there, but the classes that I think it's the winner with, I think far and away it's going to be the best with Warrior, because they like having damaged minions on both the opponent's side of the board and their side of the board so much, and because they already have a class card that does exactly that. So Warrior's number one. And then your number two are going to be, I think, the ping classes. Your Druid, Mage, Rogue. I give Rogue maybe a little edge here because comboing it with the hero power, with all their kind of little tools that do one little damage here and there, that's where this thing can kind of stretch for more value. Rogue I get a little bit of an edge for because it has a lot of real flexible things where it can say exactly, I want damage here, or I want to damage my own guy, or things like that. You know, classes that I think it's okay in Shaman. You know, it's you have to manage it with the other classes a lot more because the downside starts to affect things a lot. Downside affects Hunter a lot, but you can pull it out a little bit with, you know, with pumping up a Hyena. Warlock, you have to manage it a lot. In Zoo, be careful. Shaman, you have to be careful with it because you're typically going to have minions out. I think those are, you know, maybe the low-end classes for it. And the, you know, dead last is going to be Paladin. I don't think you could really use it in any Paladin deck unless you plan on never using your hero power at all. I really can't see it in Paladin. It wrecks your Divine Shields. It wrecks your hero power. Real bad there. So, like all cards, we'll just have to see kind of where it goes and how it stands up to Zoo, you know, to Zoo, how it stands up in anti-aggro, and maybe there's even uses for it beyond anti-aggro. I don't know. We'll have to see how the metagame continues. Talk about more cards soon. Smooth sailing.